Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of Movie Pictures, the Movie Pictures podcast series that we at Film Hub NI, supported by Northern Ireland Screen through the Department of Communities in Northern Ireland here, have put together to engage right across our membership and right across the UK and Ireland with training for moving and pivoting independent exhibition work onto the online world. This is strange times that we live in. And the Film Audience Network, of which we are a proud member, is obviously dedicated to getting people in a room together watching the best films that they possibly can. However, in these COVID times, the internet, the online world, is something that a lot of our members have worked with over the last nine months to a year. And we're going to hear from a lot of players today in that sector about the work that they've done over the last year and the possibilities both to engage audiences online, but also to complement the live screenings that we are all going to be doing in a couple of months, fingers crossed. I'm joined by Sara Smith. Hello, Sara.
Hello there.
How are you? And which part of Belfast are you in today?
I'm in the southern part of Belfast today.
Right, lovely.
It's very
And
raining.
we're delighted to be. Is it raining? Yes. Well, that's part of the course. Probably all these podcasts will feature rain. We'll be delighted to be joined by Jim McLean from Banterflix. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Hugh. Hello, how are you?
And where are you today?
I'm in wonderful. I was going to lie and say it was sunny Lisburn, but I'm in dreary, wet, miserable Lisburn. But okay. It's still good. It's still good.
Okay. That's not the trademarked name of Lisburn, I should point out. And we're also joined by Christopher Morrison from the Foyle Film Festival. Hello, Christopher.
Hello.
How are you doing? How's the weather in Derry?
It's just begun to snow.
Lovely. Well, hopefully you'll be able to. You will be, during this podcast, you'll be like snowed in or something.
Yeah.
Well, next time we see you with a shovel. Well, Sara, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to welcome all the people who are listening or watching to this podcast, which is called the Moving Pictures podcast series. And what this particular series of podcasts is part of a program that, as you mentioned, is funded by Northern Ireland Screen, supported by the Department for Communities. Basically, what we want to do is work with our members and also wider exhibitors outside Northern Ireland to support people in getting work online. And this is a series of 8 podcasts. We have 7 particular topics and then a special bonus podcast, which all will be revealed about, which will take it right back to the importance of a theatrical release for a film. But in the meantime, we'll be covering everything from platforms like these lovely guests today to audience development and evaluation. And you can dip into any part of them that you might need for your organization or listen to them kind of as a series. And they will also, they'll be available on the usual platforms, but they will also be available captioned on our YouTube channel, which you will know if you're watching this. But if you're listening to it and you might want to tell somebody to go and do that, that will be there. So that's just what I wanted to say about the podcast series.
Thank you, Sara. Well, key to the success of any online venture, if you're thinking of moving work online, is the researching and choosing of the correct platform to use. There are many platforms out there, and we are not recommending one or other because we've brought in some people who've been through the experience of choosing that today. So I wondered, Christopher, maybe you could tell us your experience of moving work online for Foyle and sort of how the initial research worked.
Initial research was done by Bernie McLaughlin, who's the director of the festival, and basically she'd looked through a number of platforms. The platform that we ended up going with was Eventive, because when she had basically been initially mentioned to distributors that she'd been dealing with, that she was looking basically into the possibility of digital screenings. A lot of them had sort of directly name checked Eventive as the industry standard, and then she'd looked into that and a couple other platforms, and basically it sort of fit a lot of the things that we were looking for. So for example, we were looking for ease of use, both for the audience member in terms of being able to just because they have quite a concise, simple graphical, when the content goes on, graphical sort of outlay, so that it's easy for an audience member to sort of like browse it, see what film they were interested in. And then in terms of also like booking and unlocking films is quite easy. And then for us, in terms of the organizer, the ease of use in terms of being able to actually put events on there quite easily, and also in terms of being able to actually get the content, the film or the video file or whatever format is on the platform as well. We're also in terms of content security as well is something we would be looking for, because filmmakers, for example, we have an Oscar affiliated competition, so competitors to that are very sort of like aware, and very, one of their main concerns in terms of like when they're doing digital screenings is the security of their work, to make sure that it can't be downloaded, copied, redistributed, etc. And also that when we're going for like, not when we're going for say features or like documentaries, the distributor or filmmaker has the same sort of concerns. So Eventive uses DRM, digital rights management system, the same level of security that Disney Plus, Netflix, and iTunes would use. So it's pretty much the industry standard. So the fact that they had such a high level of sort of like protection around like intellectual property, copyright, and that was a big sort of plus for us as well.
I mean, you're a very established film festival. I mean, was it 32 years now, I think, or
33. I think the last one might have
33. Been. Time flies. I remember Richard E. Grant appearing at your 30th. So as an established kind of festival, you have, you've got to sort of work out about your brand and, trusted filmmakers and stuff like that. Jim, you actually started, this is your first year, is that right?
This was our first year. We've been planning to do a festival for a long time. The talk kind of really started for us in 2018. We decided to push ahead and push further in 2019. End of kind of 2019, we were starting to think of, right, okay, 2020, it's going to be our year for a festival, a horror festival in Belfast. Then COVID hit, and then we kind of, like a lot of people, thought that it would be over by summer and we wouldn't have to worry about it, and we maybe had social distancing. But unfortunately, as we all know, things changed, and we started once around the time, I think it was Galway Film Festival moved online. We really properly started to think about it, and all the things that Christopher was talking about there was all things that I was kind of thinking of. And I know the one thing for us was like the security of the content and the filmmakers, because they were submitting their work to us, and we wanted to ensure that it wasn't going to be pirated in any way. And we have concerns because, piracy is a big thing online. Not that I've ever done it ever, but we knew going in, we didn't have the budget of, say, a Galway Film Festival, Foyle Film Festival, even Belfast Film. We didn't have that budget, and we looked at a few options. We spoke to Galway, and they had give us a contact, and I'm not sure, was it Pro Festivals they went with, and they created like an out of the box festival option, and we sent a lovely email off, and I'll not say what the price was starting from when we came back at that stage, but needless to say, it was just well beyond our limits, and we started to look at things that were affordable. The QFT around that time had launched the QFT player. I think it actually wasn't actually long after the first lockdown, QFT player developed. And we got speaking to Michael Staley, and there was Aaron there, and we looked at it as an option, and that's what we eventually settled on. It's a service, Vimeo OTT, so it's a different service from just Vimeo.com. And what we find for us, for a startup that we didn't know, like now in 2021, we're now trying to figure out what we do now with that player now, how we go forward. We don't want to just kind of get rid of it. I was on an online panel yesterday for Rotterdam Film Festival, and they were talking about this, like the fact that it's hybrid may be the future. And that's what we're trying to figure out now, what we do with the player now that we have, a lot of content up there. We struggled, I don't know, maybe it would be different for Foyle, but I know we find a struggle to get kind of sales agents and stuff to kind of deal with us for letting their content go up online. The costs they kind of talked about were scary, because one of the things we did want to do, we wanted to make sure all our content was geo-locked. It was geolocked to UK and Ireland.
Yeah.
That was kind of a thing, because I know that was one thing you just kind of pick up from what you speak to when you're speaking to other programmers, other festivals. That was a big thing for Galway, that their service had to be geolocked to Ireland.
Yeah.
And I think for us, the big inspiration came, we looked at what the likes of Fright Fest were doing. They've now done, I think it's 3 festivals they've now done online. I think they've went online 3 times, and that's kind of been our major inspiration at looking at that. But Vimeo TT, it was a much more cost-effective option for us, and we find it quite user-friendly. But with that, I mean, there's limitations with it, I suppose. I mean, we can go into, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was just going to say to Jim, picking up on the price point there again, because there's obviously a lot of platforms out there.
Yeah.
What sort of price? I mean, for anybody who's listening who maybe is starting from scratch and doing all this research that you and Michael and Christopher and all have already done, like, is there a ballpark for? Is it, you know, per upload, per watch, you know, per skin in the player? What did you find that were the major costs?
Well, for us anyway, I know, like, when we first looked at the festival option, an out of the box digital festival option, I think before you even had any content, I think was sitting from memory was around $4,500. And we were, needless to say, kind of, you know, that's not, now saying that, if I was an established festival, you know, someone like Sundance, London Film Festival, Berlin, or a really well-established film festival, I would say it wouldn't be a problem, because I liked what it did. It was kind of carrying on that ethos of what a festival's all about, that it's a set time, you have to sit down in front of your computer, you watch your film, and then they kind of push people online. We just couldn't have afforded that. I don't think my wife, with us just getting a house 2 years ago, I don't think my wife would have allowed me to spend that. But we looked at Vimeo T, and it looked at the way from memory with it, how it operated was per the hours of content that you created. So I think on and all, we've spent I think on Vimeo TT around £300 so far. I think, just kind of because it's all in dollars, so you're kind of, I'm trying to translate it in my head. But I think to date we spent about £300 in investing in the content, but then that doesn't include, I suppose, then your fees with sales agents and stuff. And that's just for your content, and you probably could have went in further with the player, but that's kind of what we did with our startup. Okay,
and Christopher, what about you guys with Eventive? What ways that work for you?
Eventive has a sort of like activation fee, which is $975, which is, I think, around 800 and something pound. So basically you have like basically an ingestion limit at the start in terms of like what that, so basically that covers your use of their platform for a year. And basically that includes the ingestion of 10 features, I think it is, and 20 shorts. And then for each additional short, it's $25 per additional feature and $5 per short. And they basically classify a short as anything underneath. So anything 30 minutes or under is a short, basically.
Right. Okay. And does that, I mean, that's the sort of the heads up cost in terms of the platform, in terms of how you deal with filmmakers, in terms of the costs of you know, booking the film or bringing the film in. Did you find it different online, or?
Bernie McLaughlin, the director of the film festival, she would have been the one mostly dealing with that. But I know from her experience, basically, that, for example, some distributors have their own platforms and have their own like VOD platforms. So some distributors are just at that point anyway, we're sort of like we're almost more open to the digital screenings, and sort of like just because I think a lot of them at that point hadn't even worked out the sort of like distribution plan for a lot of their films, just because they just like film festivals are coming to terms with it. At that time, some distributors were still coming to terms with it. So it really just depended in terms of what distributor you were going to, in terms of like what their response was.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a bit early to maybe ask these questions, since both of your festivals are a bit later in the year. But when looking at the festival, you know, the next edition of your festival, if you mean, are you planning to keep a lot of work online as well as in real life stuff, or are you just waiting to see what happens? And you've still got a lot of skills, you know, to do both.
A lot of it depends in terms of like what state the cinema, in terms of like are they open in terms of like what the social distancing around it is, in terms of how much of their sort of like regular facilities, or like how much of it has returned to what it would normally be. But even once we go back to like 100% normality, we will still not it won't be like this in terms of like this year was like trying to recreate in as full form as possible the normal experience. But for example, when we return to like full physical screenings, there will still be an online element in terms of like even if it's just like our Oscar affiliated competition screenings, there being like, as well as like the physical screenings that we would normally show in the nerve center, there would also be like online screenings, just so that you have the ability to reach that wider audience. And in terms of like this year, competition filmmakers were able to see the films in the see their film in the competition package that it would have screened in, which is not something, an opportunity that they would normally have had, because not all competition filmmakers are able to travel to the physical screening. So the fact that they've that, it just means that we will be keeping some element of it, even if it's just that or one or two like digital screenings. But certainly it will be maybe not like 50-50, but it will be a sort of like slightly blended program in terms of like, so like once we return to full physical, the online element won't just be disappearing, sort of thing.
I think this is something that all festivals are facing. Literature festivals, I noticed that the Adelaide Festival, they could do live in readings, but they have taken the opportunity, because of travel issues and stuff like that, to create this very, very, very international program, which is would be much more international than they would have done in the past, because audiences are now used to engaging with things online.
I mean, like the majority,
they're maybe more willing to be flexible.
The majority of our content was geo-blocked as well, because that's something else. Like most of these platforms, Eventive gives you the ability to geo-block it to certain geographical areas. They use a mixture of IP detection and proxy, I think. So it's basically based on quite a strict IP address based sort of system. The majority of our content was UK and Northern Ireland. There was a number of them as well that had the Republic of Ireland, and then some of them were without restrictions. It just depends in terms of like the distributor. Some of them only have the rights for it to a specific area, and therefore that's why you can only geo-block it to those particular areas. But yeah, so that again, the option is there, that you can put no restrictions on it, but the majority of it, I think, as with most festivals in the UK, was that sort of area that we would normally appeal to. But even within the UK and Northern Ireland, that is still giving you greater reach than you would normally have, because normally, obviously, with physical screenings, we would only really have people in at most really in the Northern Ireland area, but usually the area around Derry. Whereas the UK and Northern Ireland does give you that wider reach of like Scotland, England, etc.
Yeah, I think for us, like, I mean, we find definite benefits of moving online in the fact that we can kind of see, like, I'm looking on Vimeo TT. Now, not that I'm not giving this podcast my full concentration, but I'm looking now at some of the sales and locations. We find maybe that there is that universality about particularly a genre like horror, that we find that we were getting audiences in, I'm looking there, Manchester, Blackheath, I think is that, and other places in Edinburgh and in Scotland. So we find audience that we wouldn't have reached before. And whilst we still got a strong core audience picking up stuff here locally, we definitely find virtues to that. Now, the geo-locking for us was something that we felt we had to do, because when we announced our festival and when we were letting filmmakers submit, we were planning a physical event in Belfast, Northern Ireland. So when I'm trying to look back at the timeline. So from about July, when Galway moved online, we said, right, we've got to prepare for the worst, but still hope for the best. We moved, I think, possibly around August, September time, we were probably being accepting that it's not going to happen. We were in October last year and we moved online. But when we did start to think about it, we contacted filmmakers. And one of the things we said, look, we're going to geo-lock this and say it's only going to be available in UK and Ireland weirdly though, when we went live, we had loads of requests from people outside of the UK going, mostly from friends of filmmakers from the international strand that we did. So going forward this year, we have in our submissions criteria, we have said, look, what we're planning for is to have a physical event. So that would be in cinema, because I miss the shared viewing experience. It's like a little drug and this kind of thing. There's nothing better in this world for watching a horror, watching a comedy with an audience and feel that shared experience. Because I know Film Devar went online during the Belfast Film Festival, and I find that really weird watching that at home on my computer, to miss an audience. But for us, for this year, I think we've still accepted we're going to do the hybrid. We will use online. Our plan at the minute is, what we've said is we want to screen our finalists in a physical venue in both the international and the Irish strand of the short film. We want to hopefully be able to show features. We've had a few features submitted. We actually had filmmakers pull out last year when we give them the option. Do you want to go online? Do you want to go physical? We've got this is all the protections we're offering you. And they kind of said, look, we've never been screened before, and we don't want our first screening to be online. And as a programmer, I'm not going to turn around and say, no, you have to screen. I said, look, I completely understand. They're hoping this year we're going to be able to do in a physical venue. But what online does, it gives you that extra space. And that's what you have to think of, I think anyway, of the digital side, of extra
like a third
content.
Space.
Yeah, because what we realized with our festival last year is we could show more content than to make someone sit in a room for particularly short films for maybe more than 2 to 3 hours. Everyone loves the cinema, but I don't know if everyone wants to sit for 5-6 hours at one
Nobody
slot.
likes it that much. Nobody likes it that much.
Mark Cousins does, maybe. I think that's the only person I can think of. But we kind of decided that if we move online, we can give more space. So it allowed us to put in more entrants, and then we were able to do a best of the rest option online. So we got more content. We created more content, and I think that's something we're looking at this year. And the big thing, I will say, for us, that we found a big bonus point, because I know, Sarah, you were on one, and Hugh, unfortunately, you weren't able to do one.
In the end, yeah.
We started doing these ideas of online panels, and they were just something that was just. We originally were going to do 1 or 2 a day, and they just kind of went boogadoo. We created far too much. My poor editing skills was stretched. But we find engagement with that. And the thing we find is we were able to engage with filmmakers, particularly all the filmmakers that showed their work. We were then able, now we didn't do it live because I was always worried about technical difficulties, stuff breaking down. So we pre-recorded it. And what we sold it to the filmmaker, like now when we were chatting on Zoom, is we said, right, you and I, we're just going to talk. And I'll have questions. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to take questions from an audience, but hopefully we'll just chat for about an hour. And that was great. We found access to that in a way that we probably couldn't have been able to afford before.
Chris, I was just going to, Chris, did you find that as well? Did you find that there was, opportunities for engaging talent and opportunities engaging filmmakers?
We had a couple of Q&As, and there was, for example, even specifically with the competitor screenings as part of the Oscar-related light and motion competition. Yeah. After every screening, there was Yvonne King, who's at the Foyle Film Festival, who is the competition manager. She after every screening, she had filmed a Q&A with the filmmakers that were involved, and basically the breadth of numbers and that. Because a lot of those wouldn't have been able to travel physically. So it opened up the opportunity for that. I mean, one of the big advantages with online is basically that in a physical screening, they are sort of like restricted to, like, they go and watch, an audience member goes and watches the screening, and they only have 3 or 4 hours, whatever that is taken. But online, for example, on Eventive, you set an availability window, which is basically the window of time that it's initially available for to be basically purchased or unlocked. So say a week, for instance, which is something you can't do with a physical screening. And then you also have a unlock window, so it's how long then, or a watch window, sorry, that's how long then they have to watch it. So for example, for Foyle, most events, it was 24 hours. So it's basically just once you've started watching it, it's how long you have to finish it. And basically that gives the opportunity for someone that they're not restricted by the same sort of like tight, they're still restricted to some extent, but it's a much wider sort of like time period that they actually have to watch it. so they could start it and go away and continue it again, sort of thing.
I was also going to ask, and did you have any technical issues? And when you did have technical issues with the platform, if you did,
in terms of playing the videos or nothing like that, no.
So if I was to come to it, a man who still struggles with the concept of playing 2 records at the same time, like a DJ, you know, is it something that you can manage? Is it something you can?
In terms of from the audience or from the organizer's perspective?
From both, I suppose. You know, in terms of, I'm thinking of like a small community theater or a small community cinema. You know,
in terms of the organizer, it is reasonably easy. For example, sort of step is so for each event or like each umbrella event, there's a term on event called an event bucket. So for example, Foil Film Festival 2020 would be an event bucket, or Foil Film Festival 2021 Intercultural, they would all be event buckets. So they're basically the specific sort of like the festival or the programming strand within like the Foil Film Festival. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And then within those, you create it's almost like you create a film directory. So you're creating a listing for the film where you basically input information like the synopsis, an image, cast, and stuff like that. And it's there that you send. Basically, it's as simple as you send an upload invite to the content provider, the distributor, or the filmmaker. So basically, there's a button on that page, upload invite, and basically all you do is you input their email address, and it'll sort of automate then an upload invite to the content provider. So they're basically able to upload the file from their email. It's an MP4 or an MOV file, and then. For after that, you basically just create event listings, but you don't have to add the film multiple times. So basically, once you've added the film once, you can then create multiple event listings without having to add the film again, and then it'll show up within your virtual catalog. And in terms of like, that's basically the graphic. That's where it is really simple in terms of like the graphical output. So like it's even simpler, I would say, for the audience member. Basically, once they've, I think they signed up the event for a sort of like to be able to buy it. Basically, so I think all you have to do is put in your email, and then add basically a card, and that's only for paid events, basically. But basically, for a customer, it's just a case of like if they were to go on once they've got the account basically on Eventive, in terms of the customer account, it's basically just a case of like browsing through, clicking on it, and then basically you click on unlock now, and basically that is so it's even simpler for the audience member than the organizer even, and it's very simple for the organizer.
Okay. And Jim, did you find that too with Vimeo?
We found ours reasonably straightforward. I know, I will say, I mean, that there was, for Vimeo OTT, we did speak a lot to the QFT. I know Michael Staley we spoke to, and I mentioned Aaron Guthrie. He actually has a great Vimeo video, a great tutorial. I would recommend if anyone's thinking of Vimeo OTT, he has it up online, and we find that kind of really straightforward. In terms of setting it up, there's a lot of kind of wording and kind of legal content and stuff you kind of going through, and sometimes you're guilty of overthinking it and you think, oh God, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? But it is pretty straightforward. The kind of uploading of content, pretty much like what Christopher said, we had, I think it was collections and categories, and it took us a little while to kind of figure that out and work it all out. But same, you only upload your content once and you can put it into various different kind of collections and various different categories. It was, I have to say, it was a really straightforward service to use. It is, I think, set in dollars, I think, as it's standard, but you can go in and you can kind of look at the specifics of the kind of UK or Euro, and by the end of it, like coming around this time around now, but when we decide to really upload content, we're coming to it much more experienced this time around it, but I suppose that was always going to be the case. First time around, you're always going to be, oh, do we do it like this? Do we do it like that? We tried to do it slightly different from the QFT. We tried to treat ours more like a Netflix or Amazon Prime, like a streaming service, that it was all the content you could buy. You could, if you wanted, go in and buy specific content, or you could rent everything for a set amount of time. And that's where we found a kind of festival pass, per se, a kind of all-inclusive digital festival pass, was where we found our biggest uptake by viewers, customers, whatever way you want to
Okay.
call them, cinema lovers, probably the best way. And that was, for us, what we found. It's with everything, you're gonna, maybe go, oh, how do you do this? How do you do that? But we find, either just looking online, if you've had that problem before, if you have a problem, I guarantee you 1,000 people have had that problem. You can usually look up online and you can find stuff. Or in the case like me, messaging someone at like 11 o'clock begrudgingly, and they're kind of going, what can I say? Just man going, how do you do this or how do you do that? And we find it, now that we've done it and been through it, we find it pretty straightforward. If anyone's used a QFT player, it's the exact same type of idea. In terms of, you're just kind of, in terms of paying for things, I find it really easy to use the QFT player, and that was why in the end we decided to use the Vimeo OTT software for our player.
Cool.
I think one thing I would say in terms of Eventive is that and they have quite a extensive sort of set of like user guides, and they're, in terms of like for someone like coming to Eventive, there really is no shortcut. And I mean, you don't have to read all of them, but I would say like take a couple of days and read through them, because basically everything that's needed basically is in their user guides. They are very detailed. And in terms of like the staff themselves, because like anytime we did have like a major like a technical issue, whatever, they were very quick to sort of like, so the Eventive were very helpful in terms of like sorting out even any issues that maybe they hadn't seen before, in terms of like being very receptive in terms of like sorting any issues like that out.
Well, I suppose it's a learning process for them as well, I suppose.
And they also recommend anyway that you take, basically, that you sign, or like you're on Eventive between, I think, 4 to 6 weeks before the festival starts, so that so that you then have the potential to sort of like encounter any like technical like glitches or whatever. But in terms of like during the festival, in terms of like playing films, nobody had really any issues with that, because on Eventive you have the possibility to do something called an admin preview, which is basically where if I have uploaded the films, put the listing on and everything, I can then almost like not replicate, but basically replicate what the viewer is going to see, and see that like an intro is then going to, like, once it's finished, the main feature is going to play, and that everything's playing okay. So the fact that you're able to sort of like replicate that before the event actually goes live or is actually available to be sold, that is quite a helpful sort of feature. That means that obviously there's still the possibility something can go wrong, but I think considering that we had like 37 features, and that's not including our competition, and we had no issues with like playback or anything, I think the admin feature is something that preview feature is something that basically helps to keep the greatest level of quality assurance on our side before it actually goes live, sort of thing.
Yeah. I would say as well, Vimeo OTT, it does something similar, because we were able as a team to do like a beta mode for a few weeks, just to kind of go in and check that. More so what we were worried about was in the upload process, because some of the files were really large, and that was the one thing we found for uploading, giving yourself that time. And I think we will learn that from next year. And the kind of you kind of think it's like, you think now it'll be uploaded like that, but some of these are large files. Like we got one from an American director, I think it was nearly 24 gigs, and that took an evening, just basically at night, kind of going before you went to bed, and then uploading it and hoping and praying internet didn't break down or anything like that.
Yeah, that's what will worry me.
So once we got it uploaded, and once we got it maybe about 2 weeks before the festival went live, the digital festival side of ticket sales were able to go live, we had a few members of the team, there's about 5 or 6 of us just going in. Now I'll say this, we didn't get reports of any issues. I don't think we watched every single film and every single panel that was uploaded. We just kind of tested an amount amongst us, and nobody had any real issues with anything.
Somebody would have said something on Twitter had there been, so I think you're
probably yeah.
With the Eventive, there is a limit in terms of like, so 10 gigabytes is around the file limit basically. That's so like I think what they had said is sometimes if it's slightly larger it goes through. I think we had one that was slightly larger and it went through okay, but basically but they have like a list of like file specifications, and like for example when it came to like filmmakers and distributors, we were able to send that to distributors. I think there was one or so basically that was one of our worries as well, in terms of like I said earlier, in terms of actually getting the content onto the platform. So basically, because their process, because they use like the DRM rights management system, is basically that it gets uploaded to their system, and then because it's then being shown online, there's this process. I'm sure the same thing happens on Vimeo and other platforms, is where they transcode it. So there's like an additional, maybe like once they've even uploaded it, it's an additional maybe hour or so, depending on the size of the file, for it to be transcoded. And then basically on Eventive system, the original file is then deleted. So that's how, do you mean that is also an element that like, to sort of improve, I suppose, the security as well. Basically that it's, once it's uploaded on their platform, the actual original source file that the content provider would have sent is deleted.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. That's very useful information for everyone, I think, there. I mean, I think it is one of those sort of things. It sounds to me like you just have to get in the middle of it and make some choices and learn as you go along. So thank you very much. We're going to talk to some other platform providers as in this series. But as Jim mentioned, there is support out there, and obviously from the companies that you're working with, there is also support as well. So thank you very much indeed, Christopher.
Thank you.
Hope it doesn't snow too hard up there.
Thanks.
And Jim, I hope you get out for your walk today.
Fingers crossed. I'm from Tyrone. I'd be lost without the rain. What can I say?
And now we have two special guests beaming in from England. We're really pleased to have Rupinder and Rob from Filmbank Media, who have joined us because you've just launched a new service to help film societies and community cinemas to connect with their audiences while all this is going on. So hello to you two, and thanks very much for coming on. How's it going?
Hi there. Thanks for having us. Good, thanks.
Good.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good.
No problem. Well, we'll just kick off with a few questions. And what was the driving impulse behind developing the service? Has this been going on for a while, since the start of lockdown, or something that you've seen kind of evolve as things have gone on?
So we've always had a digital service in mind, and we were actually creating one at that time. But with lockdown, we were really mindful of the fact that the effect of the pandemic meant that everything had to close, and we were wanting to fill the need to provide a service quickly. Our customers were coming to us for a solution to keep their community cinemas going. Societies actually, and some were even asking if they could use Netflix and Amazon Prime to carry on their screenings, which we can't approve because these typically don't allow their platforms for commercial use, and our license would never cover that for them. And so we wanted to bridge this gap and develop a service that allowed non-theatrical film screenings our customers could access together. And at the heart of that, what we wanted to develop was a service where we could create some sort of community feel in some way. So we developed a text chat facility within that screening room.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And just to add to that from a technology point of view, for us, so Filmbank have been creating a broader technology offering for the last few years. And included in that roadmap has always been a way for people to share the community experience of cinema, even if they're a distributed audience. So what this is really has been a bit of a reprioritization of that roadmap to put this service at the front and deprioritize some of the ones that then became less effective during that lockdown period.
Okay. Sure. And you mentioned sort of the sector. Did you have much consultation with some of the sector bodies when you were planning this process?
So we talked to our customers, we took on their feedback and their requests. We also commissioned a survey in collaboration with Cinema for All to engage the need for a digital non-theatrical service. We also wanted to get an idea of the sort of content that might be in demand for the service as well. And out of that, the results were really positive, where the majority of respondents wanted to see a digital service and welcomed a chat facility so they can get on board and create that community feel. We also found that there was a real strong requirement for indie content. So that's when we set to work and contacting our partners to participate in the service.
Yeah.
And did that sort of bring up challenges in terms of program, in terms of your offer at your end?
Yes, it did. I mean, we're talking to a whole range of our partners, and we were finding that some of them were hesitating because it could be seen as a home entertainment product. On the whole, the reception has been really positive, and we found that their reaction has been in more of a positive light than a negative, where partners are really excited, and we have onboarded a few indies who are really wanting to take part in this service with us. The conversations are ongoing, and we hope to onboard more and enhance our content offering and establish the service.
And from, again, just from the tech point of view, that consultation was something we wanted to have front and center. So we made sure throughout the development, we were talking with a range of those film societies and community cinemas, just to understand what their wants and needs were, and make sure we were always building in a way that would support our exhibitors. You know, we're a B2B service. We support our exhibitors, who in turn are supporting their audiences, you know, acting as that community hub. So we were always engaging with what their wants and needs were to make sure that the end product would be delivering a service that they wanted and could use, and then they could pass on to their customers too.
Yeah, because one of the big things throughout this whole process over the last year for a lot of smaller, fan members has been about threshold anxiety. I think you could call it, about online, and how to engage with it best. Which is one of the reasons we're doing these podcast series. Did you find when you were doing the consultation that was an issue, the technical issue of what the offer could be and how it worked, and how do I do this? And
absolutely. And of course it's going to be, because these are people who've been doing this excellent work, been exhibitors for a long time, have got a consistent audience, are used to a venue, are used to a process, and then we're talking about a brand new workflow for them. And what we wanted to do was to simplify that transition as much as we possibly could. And ways of doing that were to try and keep that workflow as consistent as possible. So when they interact with FilmBank, their experience with FilmBank Media is going to be as close to what it had been in this new virtual world. So, people will still be going to filmbankmedia.com to have a look at the catalogue. They'll still be communicating with our sales teams to make the booking. And just at that point, we're adding in a little bit more information to be able to create the room. And then the technology we chose to go with in the end was the one that allowed the widest possible access. So that's not just the widest possible access for the exhibitors, but also the widest possible access for the audiences, so our exhibitors' customers. Because as soon as you bring in the idea of an app, you shut people out. You've raised that threshold. So it's a web-based service, and it's got the fewest steps for the end user, and it's got the least change in the workflow for the exhibitors too. So it's always been about access. The other side of that is balancing it to a price point that people can still engage with. So we're trying to appeal to people who either have been using other services or are looking or have no tech experience at all, and we can still work with that whole range.
Okay.
That's brilliant. And I know this is kind of early days of launching the service, just this period. What has the response been so far?
It's been really positive. Virtual Screening Room launched on the 18th of January, so we've been going a couple of weeks now. We found that our customers were really excited to see this service finally launch, and we're really keen to find out more about it, what it was, how it worked, and how they could book with us. So we've been busy working with these customers to go through these steps and to help them plan their screenings.
I mean, I suppose from you work with a lot of studio partners, obviously, who have their own proprietarial kind of streaming systems and things like that. Were they responsive to the idea of developing this kind of communal online response? Did they get it, if you know what I mean?
On the whole, yes, they get it, but there are concerns of it encroaching into home entertainment. So those sorts of conversations are ongoing, but the initial feedback has been really positive. But as with anything that we do in this non-theatrical space, is that we need to navigate through the rights and the windows that are on offer for us. So we're constantly having these conversations with our partners to make sure that, what we are offering is within our, within the non-theatrical space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
You've invested, sorry, I was going to say you've
no,
invested,
go ahead, Sarah.
You've invested quite a lot of obviously time and money and effort into getting this all exactly right, and with the consultation. Once the pandemic ends, will it ever end? Who knows? If so, if well, it feels like it won't right now, but
Don't say that.
Don't say that.
if you're listening to this podcast in the summer, let's hope that that it has ended. But so the long-term future for this, as kind of screenings get back online and we get people back into the cinema, what do you see the kind of future for this, kind of on the short term and the long term?
We do see Virtual Screen Room as a service well established amongst our film societies and community cinemas. And this is now, while we're in the pandemic, and also in the long term. So we see the service working in tandem with physical media screenings to try and to those customers who perhaps can't leave the house because they're a little bit elderly, or people who have transport issues and can't get to a venue. So for us, it's always been about creating a community feel in difficult times and also through easier times, to include those people who couldn't take part in a screening, but historically, but are now able to, because we can offer them a virtual experience.
I think strategically, and obviously the Film Audience Network has been very strong in terms of diversity and in terms of accessibility for disabled audiences and things like that. One of the feedback we're getting around conferencing and collective action online is that access for disabled audiences is much easier, for obvious reasons, but also there is a sense that is a developing area that exhibitors have to engage with, and this is a useful tool for that.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we were thinking about when we were creating this, because we didn't just want it to be a solution to plug a hole because of the pandemic. Yeah. We wanted this to be a product that could have, be well established within our markets, and to open up the opportunities to be a part of a film screening, even if that meant that you can't physically be there because of, various factors.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So supporting hybrid events particularly. So where, post-pandemic, it's easy to imagine a circumstance where exhibitors are using their old venues and they're back, but maybe they've got a wider audience and they can create that hybrid with people joining from home as well as in that physical space. Yeah. And it allows other approaches to access as well. So for hearing impaired audiences, it's a function that the player allows you to select as an individual audience member the subtitles. So if you're watching an English language film, you can still select English language subtitles to go with it, and that only affects you as one audience member, and the next person watching wouldn't have to do that, and they'd watch it without any subtitles at all.
Yeah, so there are definite access possibilities behind it.
Exactly, and those were the drivers in that original period of thinking, of making sure we were, as Rupinder was saying, reaching those remote communities, communities who are less mobile, just trying to broaden the access, and help our exhibitors to be that hub. And to join those audiences together, even if they can't all actually access a physical venue. So yeah, it's always been one of the drivers. And I think one of the other things is that transition period. As the lockdown ends, there's going to be some resistance for people getting back out, back out generally. So, but specifically to cinemas, which are enclosed, tighter spaces. So there will be a bit of a hump, and hopefully people will be able to use this hybrid approach to start, bringing people back in and having full-size audiences, even if they can't all fit in the same venue. So it's, being part of that change back to whatever normal looks like.
Yeah. Whatever it looks like when we get to the other side.
Exactly.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, one thing I suppose would be useful just at this is just to describe the offer and how people can engage with it, I suppose.
So we launched on the 18th of January. So if people want to see they can go to our website, which is www.filmbackmedia.com. It's on VSR virtual screening room page. On there is a whole host of information on what VSR is and how to book with us as well.
Okay.
We also have our lovely Sophie, who is our dedicated virtual screening room assistant, who will tend to those bookings for our customers.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, so so there is there's assistance there. You're not just on your own in the cold internet.
Oh,
No.
absolutely. And so what people will be getting is, once they've chosen that title and been in touch, they'll be providing the date and the time of the screenings. They'll be giving a name for the event, which will be a banner headline for that event. So when the audiences log in, they'll see the name of the event or the name of the film society, whatever people choose. So they'll know they're in the right place with their audience, the people they're familiar with seeing movies with. And then obviously, because it's a timed event, there'll be, when people log in, they'll see a countdown, and everybody's stream is simultaneous. So while they can change the volume or the audio or the subtitles, they won't have control over play and pause. So that's how the community can rally around that single event. So as close as we can, we've tried to reproduce a conventional screening, but virtually. So everybody's stream starts at the same time and it plays out in full, and no individual audience member can play and can pause and restart the title.
Right.
And at the same time, once they give themselves a screen name, they can then participate in the chat, which a bit like, say, Zoom, is a text box on the right-hand side of the screen. And obviously, they can use that before the screening, slightly controversially during, but it's not voice, so hopefully nobody will interrupt. And then again, it'll run after the screening as well. So obviously, if somebody wants to put their movie full screen, then that's no problem. It'll hide the chat function and push the picture right to the edges so they get the most cinematic experience. Right, the fun thing about it is, if they choose to do that, they can also decide to participate in the chat on a second screen. So say they have a tablet or a mobile, they can use their credentials again, and the mobile version, so for tablets and phones, is dedicated only to that chat. So if they plug their computer into a TV, they've got the best possible screen, best possible sound, but then they can also participate in the social side using another device.
So you really do have that option of community and connection and communication and talking about the film and
Yeah, absolutely, Hugh. It's really the backbone of the tech process we were going through in the build, was to make sure we reproduced all of those elements as closely as we could. So trying to focus on community, shared experience, chat, the social side, as well as making sure people got the best, audio visual experience as well.
Well, that's great. Sarah, did you have any other questions from your end?
No, I think it sounds great, and I think that's really interesting about the chat function and stuff as well, because I know we've had certainly some members who have been trying to watch screenings at the same time and then go on to a Zoom, and if you've got and trying to open more tabs and log into more things, it sounds like a really streamlined thing to do. Obviously one of many platforms available, we should say, but it was really great to hear from both you guys about that, and we wish you all the best with it.
Yeah,
our pleasure. Thanks so much for having us. Cheers.
Thank you for your time, and we'll hopefully see you in a real screen soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yes. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.